Okay, so in the second part of our HTML crash course, we are going to create a new file and we'll name this user.html. So this will definitely open a new HTML blank page. Then we'll do HTML, we come and select HTML5. Then for the title, we want user page. We are going to save this. So we can go into our folder and see we have user, and we can see we have the user HTML file over here. So we can open this up, and we haven't written anything over here, so we definitely have a blank page. But you can see we changed the title to user page. That's what we have over here. So we go into our HTML. Now this is what we want to do. We want to have an idea of, let's say we have a user registration form. Like in most cases, we see websites with forms like this. This is actually a form. So normally you have a registration form or maybe a signing in form or logging in form, things like that. So you have a session where you enter your credentials. So this is actually a Google account registration form. So we are going to see something like this, and how do we represent this in HTML. So first of all, let's do an H3 tag, and we'll simply type H3 and press enter. Then we'll say user registration. So in our user registration form, we'll save this. If you go into our browser, come and refresh, we are going to see our user registration form over here. Now we are going to go back into Visual Studio, and for the form, we have a tag called form. We are just going to save form for now. Under normal circumstance, Visual Studio expects you to process the form. Now you are just looking at the markup aspect of it, how to place things where, how to place where you're supposed to put username and things of that kind. So for now, you're not going to look at processing the form, but just looking at the markup. So we have a tag label, and I'm going to clear this. These are attributes we may not need for this illustration. So for the label, we are going to say first name, and the label is what is going to show. So for instance, this is what we are going to see. When we save this and come back and come and refresh, you can see that we have a first name over here. But in order to make things look a little bit nice, let's put a horizontal line just under or in between these two items. So for instance, you can put a horizontal line here, which is HR, and our form will look a little bit presentable. All right, so everything as far as the form is concerned will be lined up down this way. So we have a label, and this label will normally go with an input. So look at this, we have input, and if you are using Visual Studio Code, as I always emphasize, you are going to see quite a number of options as far as input is concerned. So we have an input for button, we have a checkbox, we have a color, we have date, date time, and a whole number of things. Now I'm going to use one for text. So you can see there's an input for text. So you can just scroll down and you're going to see those options. So there's an input for text, and we just leave it this way. We are not going to talk about these attributes for now. So we have an input for text. Now when we save this and go back into our browser, we are going to see that this becomes an input where we can type, let's say, a name or any other thing. Okay, and type in our first name. It's very important. So we have a label for first name. So this is the label. The label is like the tag on it, okay? And the input is where you actually write in what you're supposed to write or what you're supposed to type. So we can have one for last name as well. So we copy this and we bring it here, and we are going to change this to last name. So when we save this and come here, we're going to see last name over here. Okay, so we are using double T. So we clear one of this. And this is what I want to do. I want to put a break tag between the two. So I'll put double break tags, and we are going to see that since we are putting a break tag over here, it's going to push this item beneath first name. So this is exactly what I'm trying to say. so that at least we have something like this. But this is a little bit formatted. Okay, that's why you see it this way. And there are a whole number of things going on over here. We are not going to go much so much into the details of things going over here, because I can see they are using JavaScript and other things, which is beyond the scope of this tutorial. But for instance, you can see that there is a last name or first name inside the text, and whenever you click on it, it disappears or something like that. Now, there's one attribute we can add in the inputs, and we can pass in an attribute called placeholder, and we can say first name. So when we type in first name over here and save, when we come and refresh, we are going to see first name inside the inputs, okay? And when we start typing, it disappears. So more or less a replica of what you are seeing over here. When you start typing, it disappears. But like I said, this is probably using a little bit of JavaScript for the styling. All right. So we'll go ahead to look at other things. So now let's assume you have something for password. So now, for instance, with my first name and last name, you can see it. Let's assume we have an input for password, or we are trying to build something which will add a password. And let's start with a label, say password. Then our inputs, if we are to use text, this is probably not going to be a very good design. So see, if you are to use text, and let me break this line over here. This is probably not going to be a good design, because for instance, we have our first name, Kenneth, we have our last name, Brony. Then the password is maybe 1234. This is not going to be a good design, because any person can just peep through and see what you are typing. So normally you see a star, star, star. And so for instance, if I'm to type a password over here, you can see that it doesn't show, okay? And that's very simple to do. So once again, whenever you are typing name, the input type is text. Okay, so there's an input type for password. So we can just clear this, and I'm just going to show you how it looks like. So you can just scroll down, and you can see the other versions. So you can just come down, and you can see that there's an input type for password. So when you type on this, or when you select this, and when we select this and we save and come back to come and refresh, okay, now you can type our name, Kenneth, our last name, Brony, and our password 123. So whichever thing I'm typing, you are not seeing, okay? And that's exactly what you have over here as far as the password is concerned. Okay, but then if I should type name, you are going to see over here. So basically, this is how it is implemented. All right, now let's look at other fields. So I'll put up a break tag over here. I mean, two of them. So I'll look at an instance where I can type in something, okay? So there's a tag we refer to as text area. And for text area, I'm just going to get rid of this. Okay, so text area, when we save this, a text area is a text area. And it's just going to be that big kind of window that you can type in. So when I refresh this, this is the text area. So you can type any other information over here. This is the text area. All right. Now, as far as this is concerned, we saw some attributes being passed over here. We saw the calls, which is representing columns. We are seeing call is 30 and rows is 10. Now we can change these calls and rows in order to change the sizing. So these are the columns. So these are the columns. Okay, the vertical cross section is the columns, and the horizontal cross section is a row. So if we should change this to about 60, what that means is it is going to look a bit wider. Okay, it's going to look a bit wider as you have over here. So that's basically that as far as text area is concerned. Then we can put a label over here. So for the label, I'm going to say other information, and I'm going to break it over here. I'm going to put a break tag over here. When we refresh, you see other information where we can type. Now there are other input fields I want us to look at. You can look at, let's put out a break tag over here, 2 of them. Then you put a label. Label, let's say this is supposed to be date of birth. And when we do a label of date of birth, the input has to correspond to a date of birth. So for instance, we can use date for this particular purpose. And when we save this and we refresh, we're going to see that this gives us an option to choose dates. So for instance, you can choose this particular date as far as the registration is concerned. All right. You can also go back here and select maybe a later date. Maybe we were born in 2004, February 12, and that's going to be the date we are going to choose. All right. Now you also saw an input field that was date time. So let's look at how that one looks. So you have inputs and you have date time. So if we should save this and come back here, we are going to see an instance where we are supposed to type it ourselves. So we type this. We type this ourselves. Okay. So normally, what programmers would do is we prefer dates, but then there are other practical reasons why you may also need the date time column. Now let's do something for email, and email is very important. So let's do a break tag over here, 2 of them. Then we'll do label. Then this label is for mail. Then under it, we have an input, and let's select email as we have it over here. And when we save, let's clear these attributes over here. We don't need them. When we save and refresh, we are going to see email over here. Now this email is going to check a number of things, and it will check if, for instance, if you have to process this and use an email field, it is going to check all the things that needs to be checked as far as emails are concerned. So for instance, if it doesn't include at something, let's say at a gmail.com or at anything.com, at hotmail or yahoo.com, it is going to pop up that there's an error. So the email field is very important. It checks it. If we are to use a text field for email, it is not going to check it. Okay, but since we are not processing our form, we are not going to see some of these things work. Now there's another one I want to see. So let's say we can have one for let's do a label for marital status. So there's a label for marital status, and in the marital status, let's put a break tag over here. And for marital status, we don't want the user typing in things over here. So for instance, for marital status, a person is either single, married, or maybe divorced, if those are the 3 options. So what we can do is we can use a select thing over here. And inside select, we are going to give them options. So for options, the value we are going to use, the first is single, and the text over here is going to be single. Then we do a shift alt and a down arrow key to duplicate. This we've seen a couple of times. Then want to change this single and its corresponding single over here to married. So I'll double click on this and do a Control D. Then it will select the 2. So whichever type or whatever action I perform on one is going to affect the other. So we are going to do married over here. Then we're also going to do a Control D and we are going to do divorced for this last option. So when we save this and come back into our form, and when we refresh, we are going to see that marital status is going to give us these options, and we can select one and only one. So these are the option field as far as this entire form is concerned. Now, we'd also want to look at, let's say, and for instance, for gender, we can use this to represent gender as well, either a male or a female, or any other thing you want to put over here. So these are the things that go through your thought process as far as designing a form is concerned. Now, after a form has been designed, or as part of a form, will then come a button. Okay, so for the button, we use the type of button, and the value is actually what is going to be shown. So you say register, and register is going to be shown for this button. So when we refresh and come here, you can see that there's a register button over here. So let's just put in some dummy text over here. So we have Kenneth and Bruni. My password definitely we are not going to see because you are using the password input type. And other information is I am a programmer. Then my date of birth, I'll probably choose maybe somewhere January. My email address is kbruni123@gmail.com. This is actually my real email. Then my marital status is single. Then I'll click on register for it to be processed. So in order to keep things a little bit nice, let's say we can just put an HR tag over here, and you're going to see a horizontal line over here. Now this looks okay as far as designing forms are concerned. Now we haven't added any CSS or any styling to it. Okay, once we add or we start adding styling, CSS, JavaScript, and things of that kind, that's where you're going to see things like this. Okay, and these look a little bit nicer one way or the other. But since we haven't done anything of that sort, at least we have the basic building block, and that's why I keep on saying that the HTML is a basic building block. One of the last things I would want to talk about as far as HTML is concerned are tables. And we see tables in a number of applications or websites. So for instance, this is a typical example of a table. Now I've put out something from Sky Sports, and it's a Premier League table. We see a lot of websites with this. Or for instance, you can see maybe you are likely to see a dashboard with the names of registered people in a company and things like that. So everything is put in a table format. And this is what a table looks like. We are going to see the fundamental building. We are going to look at the fundamentals for which tables are designed and built. So we are going to more or less put out a replica of this. So we are going to have Premier League 2020-2021 over there. So we are going to put this in an H3 tag. We are going to say Premier League 2020/2021. And when we save this and come back here, we have this over there. Good. Now, let me take time to explain what's going on over here. Now, as far as tables are concerned, there are some things you need to understand. Now, tables are structured in rows and columns. Now, these are the rows. The rows are the horizontal cross-section. Okay. So these are the rows. These are the rows. These are the rows in that order. And the columns are the vertical cross-sections. So for instance, the column 1 deals with the numbering or the positions. The column 2 has to do with the names of the teams. Column 3 has to do with the number of matches played, I guess. Column 4 has to do with the number of wins represented by W and things of that kind. Now, within a row, within each row are some kind of data. So for instance, this is the second row, and this is the data within the second row, this is the data within the second row, and things of that sort. And that's exactly how tables are structured in HTML. So now this is what you're going to see. There's an HTML tag table for table, actually. So this is table, and everything goes within the table. Now the first thing you are going to see over here is that we have the row. Okay, but then this is not an ordinary row. This is actually the header or the head of the row. This is the head of the row, because as far as this is concerned, this may not be counted as part of the rows. This is probably the first row, which has Leicester on top of the log. So this is going to be the head of the row. So we have an HTML tag called T head. So within T head, so this is T head, okay. Then within T head, there's a row. So you can see we are going one after the other. Then there's an HTML tag row, which is TR, which stands for table row. So this is a table head, and within the table head, there's a row. And these items you see over here are the table header items. So we have another HTML tag called TH, which is table head. So within the table head, now we have the hash symbol for the first one, as you can see over here. Then you have team, DL, WD, and things of that sort. So we are going to do this. And from here, we can copy and paste. So if you have been following me along, I have a shortcut which I normally use. That's Shift Alt and the down arrow key. This is only going to work if you are using Visual Studio Code. So the next one is going to be team. Then you are going to have, I think, EL. Then this is going to be win. This is going to be draw. And for the purposes of this, we are just going to end with lost, or the lost matches, or the else. So that's exactly what you have. So we've ended over here. We are not going on to this part. So when we come back and come and refresh, we are seeing this lined up over here. Now they've been bolding because we told HTML that these are the headers. So all these are contained in the head. So now let's come back to this. So now we have this. Okay, we have this head. Now you can see that we have this row, but then this row is a little bit different from this, because this is actually the table body. So now for the table body, there's an HTML tag called T-body. So we have T-body, and the rest of everything over here, this data goes into the T-body. So within the T-body too, we have a row. So for instance, this is row 1, and it had Leicester. But like I told you, these are the data representing or being represented in the rows. So what you can see over here, within the row 1, we have a table data. So we do TD. And the first one is 1. So let's duplicate this a couple of times. And okay, so LEIE. So Leicester City. And Leicester City has played 8, won 6, drew 0, and lost 2. So we have 8602. So let's put out 860, and let's duplicate this. So Shift Alt, the down arrow key, then you bring our 2 over here. So let's go back into our HTML and see how things looks like. So you can see that it is being represented nicely over here, like we have it over here. Okay, one way or the other. The rest of it we'll probably do copying and pasting. So we'll copy this. So for instance, this was for the row 1, and for the row 2, it's pretty much going to be the same, except for the data within the tables. Okay, so for instance, we have 2, or the second position, Tottenham Hotspurs, and these data over there. So for instance, we have 8521. So let me quickly change that one. 8521. Then this is number 2. Then you have Tottenham Hotspurs. So you have Tottenham. Then we'll copy this and go to the third team. So let's refresh and see how things look like over here. So as you can see, We have Tottenham Hotspurs, and these are things represented in a table. Now let's go. The third one is Liverpool, and we have 8521. Just as Tottenham Hotspur, so this 8521. So you're only going to change this to number 3 and have Liverpool over here. Let's duplicate this to Control C. We'll do a Control V over here. So this is going to be number 4. Number 4, let me check. We have Chelsea. No, we have Southampton for number 4 and 8512. So 8512, and we have Southampton. So Southampton. I hope I got the spelling right. Then let's end with Chelsea. Let's end with Chelsea. So you have number 5. Number 5 to be Chelsea. And for Chelsea, we have 8431. So 8431. All right. So when we save and come back here and come to refresh, we can see that we have a replica of this table. Now this table looks more organized and pretty much nicer than what we have created over here, and that's simply because there are some CSS and perhaps maybe JavaScript running behind the scene, which we don't know. But as far as the table is concerned, we have used HTML, and that's the main objective of this tutorial, to look at the basic building block of some of these things. So these are things you see not only on websites like this, but then also on websites where maybe you have an inventory system, you put things in a table, maybe an e-commerce website, things are in a table, the number of products and things like that. So at this point, I would want us to recap on some few things and look at HTML, not as in HTML, but then HTML building a proper website. All that we did was to look at the outlook, but then these basic elements, the tags we spoke about, the first part and in this part, comes together to build the website. And in doing so, there is some kind of a structure that one must follow. So for instance, if you decide to build a house, the house should come with some kind of a structure. So we have some kind of houses over here. So this is the first house and this is the second house. These are both houses, as you can see. As a matter of fact, this looks like a normal house and this looks like a story building. As far as these two structures or these two buildings are concerned, they kind of have the same structure. Now this is what I mean. The foundation of the house is definitely going to be at the base. You are not going to have the foundation at the top or at the apex of the building. The foundation is going to be at the base. So whether it is a single structure or a two-story building or a skyscraper, the foundation is always going to be at the base. So for this building, the foundation is going to be at the base. For this different building, to the foundation is going to be at the base. Then as far as the structure of the house is concerned, the roof is going to be at the top. So the roof is going to be at the top. The roof is going to be at the top, no matter the kind or the design of house we intend to build. Now I'm saying this in the sense that all websites will have a structure, but then what will make a website different from another website in terms of its looks, in terms of its functionality, will be the intrinsic things that will go in there. But as far as the structure is concerned, like we have with these two houses, or we have with these two buildings, whether a skyscraper or a single building or story building or whatever you have it, the structure is going to be almost the same. And you can see that we have a door. The door is always going to be where a human being or an object can easily have access to. Then the window will probably be somewhere here for ventilation purposes. So that's the kind of a structure as well as building houses are concerned. Now, I would want us to envisage building of websites like that way. So there's a structure, and this is what we refer to as the semantic element in HTML. So as far as every website is concerned, and we are going to look at a couple of websites and how these things pan out. So the semantic element clearly describes its meaning to both the browser and the developer. So irrespective of whether you are starting a new project or the project was given to you for you to do a review or to improve upon the project, there are some things you are going to see and it's going to make sense to you. So it is clearly going to describe what is happening wherever it's supposed to happen. So for instance, if this is supposed to be a website page, you are going to have at the very top the header. As I said, later on we are going to look at real website, different websites where we are going to see these things being located. So for instance, you are going to have a header, you are going to have a nav or a navigation where you can click and move to other websites. Then we are definitely going to have the main area of the website. You may also have the section, the side area, and the footer. The footer sits at the base. So if you are to relate this to a house, the footer will be the foundation, the header will be the roof, and the other things will be contained in here. So this is a website and this is go.com. So now, as far as this website is concerned, this area, as you have it over here, has to do or has to be the header. But within the header, we have the navigation area or the nav. So you can see the nav is within here. The design can look a little bit different with different websites. Then when you come down here, you are going to see that this, we can say this can be the main area or a section. Then this is the side area. So normally you have side areas where you put your advertisements or your sponsors in here. Then when we go down, you are going to see this is also going to be another area or section of the website. You have an aside area somewhere here. This can be an aside area. Then at the very bottom of your website, you have the footer. So the footer is always going to be at the base. Now, let's go to another website. This is a different website altogether, and this is skysports.com. Now, on this website, you are going to see this is going to be your header. As you have it over here, at the very top is going to be your header. Then this is going to be your nav, your navigation area, where you click. This should take you to a different page. As you can see right over here, there's a different page. On the other side, this is going to be your main area. This is going to be your main area. And you can see, let me quickly move down. These are all sections within the website. We can move on, and definitely the footer is always going to be at the bottom. So clearly, you would see that whenever you are designing a website, let's say you are not the person who designed the website first. It has been given to you for you to update it. Now, without anyone telling you, you will definitely know that the footer is going to be located at the bottom of your HTML code. And that's exactly what, and that's where the whole concept of the semantic element in a website comes into play. So we saw the header, the navbar, the main area, the section, or we can the aside, and the footer. Now, one of the things we would also want to look at, definitely we'll go back into VS Code and see how some of these things work. Some of them are inline elements, others are block elements. So an inline element, when you write an inline element, as the name suggests, it puts things on the same line. So for instance, an inline element does not start a new line. It only takes up as much as width it can have as necessary on the line. So an example of the inline elements are the span. We are going to look at the span. Then we already spoke about the B tag or the bold tag. Then you have the italic tag. We also have the anchor tag, the input tags, as well as the image tags. At this point, I'll switch to VS Code, and we are going to create a new file. We are going to call this page.html. We are going to type in HTML5. It will generate the structure for us. And for the title, we are going to say page. Now we'll go into our folder as we have it over here. This is our page. When we open, it is only a blank page. We don't have anything in here. Now what we are going to do is we are going to put out the general semantic structure of the website and adding some of these elements to see how things work. So for instance, at the very top, we can have the header, and everything that goes in here will go into the header. Then we can also have the nav, and this is going to be the navigation area, and that's going to be under the header. Then we can as well have the main area. That's going to be the main area. Then we can have a side. Then last but not the least, we are going to have footer. So practically, you may not need all these things for a website. Okay. The fact that this is the semantic structure of a website doesn't mean every website should have it. Okay. Every website may have it, some may not. Now, let's put things over here, and remember, everything is within the main body or the body tag. So within the nav area, and this is your navigation. Okay, so let's do an A tag, and let's link this up to index.html. Then this is the text that's going to display its index page. Now we'll save this, and when we come here and come and refresh, we have index page over here. Now when we click on this, it's going to take us to the index page. So you come back. So this is page.html. So far, this is what we have. Now look at something that you are going to see over here. Now when we put out another A tag and do user.html, let's say this takes us to the user page. This takes us to the user page, and we come and refresh. Now, clearly you can see that the index page, as far as the text is concerned, and the user page are on the same line, and that's what we refer to as inline elements. They are on the same line, or they are put on the same line. So when we click on the users page, it's going to take us to the user registration form, the one we just completed. And this is going to take us to the index page. And now this is page.html, what we are currently working on. Now, I would want us to do this. Now, let's come into the main area, and let's do something interesting over here. So now let's do an H3. And for the H3, let's do information. And let's save this. And let's do another H3. And this time around, let's do communication. And save this. Now when we refresh this, you can see that information and communication are appearing on different lines. And this is what we refer to as a block element. So the A tags are inline elements, or the anchor tags are inline elements, and the heading tags, the H's, so this is H3, this is H3, these are block elements. So depending, and these are the default settings. Depending on the type of HTML tag that you are using, it is either going to be a block element or an inline element. It is very important to note this. Now, there are ways and means you can do to change some of these things, but then by default, this is how it works. So now let's look at some few things over here. Now let's put out a paragraph and see. For the paragraph, let's do a lorem, dummy text, Control S, we save. When we come here, this appears so. Now let's put out another P tag and do another lorem. When we save this and come back to refresh, we can see that this is also a block element. Now let me try and clear these parts off so that you see it very well. Now this is what I mean. If this was an inline element, because the first paragraph is short, it's supposed to continue from that end. But because it's a block element, you can see that although it ends here, there's enough space for this lorem or the second paragraph to continue from. But then because it's a block element, it comes down and starts on a different line. Block elements. We are saying that the block element always starts on a new line and it takes up the full width available. As we saw, the heading tags takes the full width available. Now it stretches out to the left and right as far as it can. So in conclusion, all HTML tags are written in angle brackets, and these are the angle brackets. So for instance, we have the tag name. So by default, there's supposed to be an opening name. It can be an H1, a P, or any tag name that you are going to have. Then you also have a closing tag, which starts with a / and the name of the corresponding opening tag. Have it here. Then inside it is going to be the content. So a typical example is going to be H1. And H1, this represents the opening tag. We have KenBroTech over here, and we close it with a / H1. Now we also have self-closing tags. And self-closing tags, they do not have opening and closing tag. They just have a single tag, which is also a self-closing tag. And a typical example, as we saw, is a break tag and the HR tag. The image tag, the img, and the input tags are also self-closing tags because they open and they close themselves. They don't have a corresponding closing tags. So thank you very much for spending time with me and learning HTML. Now, definitely we are going to improve on the basic skill that we've obtained now into creating a very nice and responsive website. Now, in order to do that, we'll need to learn other skills, which include CSS, JavaScript, and other things. But trust me, HTML and CSS can give you a very nice and interesting website application, at least a static website for that matter. Now, if you find this tutorial very interesting, you can support me, help grow my channel. Now, the first thing you can do is to subscribe to this channel. You can as well like and share this video to anyone who you think will find this content useful. Thank you very much and see you next time. Bye-bye.